What's up, YouTube? Welcome back for another Solo Omega episode. This will be episode 7. I'm going to be going through a lot of information in this one. I'm going to be basically talking about nullsec and security, survivability, basically just how to survive, taking game mechanics that, you can use for yourself to help, protect yourself in different situations or different activities. So what I'll do is I'm going to start off by just kind of flying around, and I'm going to show you the decisions I make based on whatever activity I'm doing, and kind of what's going through my mind as far as like response if something happens, like a nuke comes in system, or just how I prepare for the worst essentially. And that's really kind of what um, null is all about, right? It's knowing that everything is potentially a threat and how you can protect yourself with different layers of protection on different activities. So I think since I've been doing a lot of mining, or not mining, but ratting lately, I'm gonna give you kind of an idea of like how things are done as far as considerations for ratting. So I don't do a lot of anomalies, right? Because actually we're gonna switch ships here so I can just covert ops around. But I don't do a lot of just combat anomalies because they're very easy for you to be jumped on, right? I mean, they don't have to be scanned, and whenever they, and to find you, all they really need to do is get close enough on D-scan, and they can even decide, like, if they see what you're running on D-scan, they could make a decision on whether or not you're in a port. There's a lot of ways that they can narrow down where you're at. We're gonna jump in this buzzard here, just because I want to be able to warp this stuff and not necessarily have to like worry about aggroing too much. But one of the things that I did whenever I started really getting like serious into like going solo was you have to start thinking like the enemy, essentially. And it's an exercise that I would recommend a lot of people do. Is if you want to do the whole like solo Omega thing in Null, you know, make a character. It could be a fresh character, whatever. Just make a character, and go out, be a nuke. You know, have that character in a NPC corp, and then just go out in Null and just try. Like if you're a miner, make a character and then just go try to warp on top of a mining ship. Or if you're a ratter, try to like track somebody down in a combat nom, or try to get to somebody in a combat site, and then take what you learn from that experience. Like, how are these people dodging you? How are these people evading you? How are these people being defensive against you in trying to basically tackle them, or you know anything like that, and use that information when you go back to do that activity yourself. And that's going to give you a lot of perspective on what their limitations are and what they have to do in order to actually get on grid with you, and then how much time and what options you have as the person they're basically targeting. So for instance, we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to warp to one of these combat anoms. And normally, like I said, I don't do combat anoms, and if I do them, I won't do anything like a golem. Usually, anything that bastions, anything that sieges. The Tengu is fine because if somebody comes in local, we can just bounce out, right? But for the most part, I just try to stay away from it, because if they come into system and they see you on D-scan and they see what ship you're in, then they can just literally just kind of, they're going to be in fast ships, especially if they're going to hot drop on you, they're going to be in things that can warp pretty fast. And so it doesn't take them very long to actually get to you. Another thing I'll do too is, if I am running with the Marauder, or if I'm running with Tengu and I have somebody come in, even though they may never get on grid with me, if I was running this Anom here and I left Rex behind, whenever I have to leave this Anom because of a newt and somebody trying to track me down, if I go back out after they kind of leave, pretty much the second I leave this Anom, I'm gonna just ignore this result. I'm gonna burn this location, because in my mind, what I would do is, if I was them, I would have came into system, right? Obviously, you're gonna leave grid. There's very little chance they're gonna get you if you're in a Tengu. But they're going to track down the Rex. They're going to figure out what Anom you're at, and then they're going to go in and they're going to bookmark those Rex. And they're expecting you to actually come back out and go back and finish the anomaly that you were on. and all they have to do is basically just come back in system, warp straight to bookmark, and it's just, point A to point B. You'll still probably get away, but just keep in mind that's a strategy that's being used against you is bookmarking and rec tracking and things like that. So every time I leave an anomaly after having to like dodge a newt, I burn that location. Simple as that. And so that would be like the strategy with this. And also you want to try to like not be near zero. I would say like pretty much for anything you do in null, try not to be at zero. And that's always like this little green arrow or this little green bracket. Whenever anybody warps to this anomaly, this is where they're going to be put. So you always want to be as far away from this as possible so that when they do get to grid, if they do get to grid on with you, you have some sort of distance from them, right? And that can be the difference between like being like a few seconds from warp. If you're like a few seconds from warp on zero, you're probably going to get tackled. But if you're a few seconds from warp and they have to travel, even if they have to only travel like 5K or whatever the case may be, they're going to probably miss you. The same goes for mining. Right here, I'm just on this medium anomaly, right? This is zero. You're not going to just warp here and just start mining stuff. And so what I'll usually do is when I warp into here, I will just go like sort distance and go for like the furthest away rock and then try to mine that. I'll try to mine the rocks are further away. And then when I do it, if I'm going to mine the whole thing out, then I'll do like what's near zero last. Right, because they can just warp straight through this. There's no scanning. So staying away from zero is extremely important. That's the other reason why like using pauses in your system are good as well, because instead of going direct, like most cases, they see you in a mining ship, they know they're probably not going to catch you on the belt, so they're going to try to catch you at like a Tatara, which is why in the past we've also run like rear tether bookmarks behind the fort. So if for instance, let's say this right here where I'm at is like the asteroid belt, and this is like the fort. We would put the rear tether on the back end. So if they are already on grid with you and they also follow your warp to the fort, they're going to go straight to the front side of the fort, whereas we're bookmarked behind it, which gives us a little bit more protection as well. And also, it's just a good strategy. Like if you're in a mining fleet and you like actually, emergency warp to the fort, they're gonna suspect you to emergency warp and dock into the Tatara, um, just because that's what most mining fleets would do. And but I can't stress this enough that like any anomaly type thing that you're doing, stay away from zero, especially for ice. Well, I'll show you a little bit more with ice when we go over there and talk about that, but it's gonna be more the same, right? You're not gonna mine ice near zero. You're gonna position yourself as far away from that, warp in marker as you can, and then using pauses and things like that. Now, the other thing to do as well, and this is another consideration, especially for ice, is being 14, or I would try to be at least like 15 from any gate. It's not possible in every system, but when it is, it's great, right? So like right now, there's only one gate in this system, and I'm 17.9 AU from it right here. And what's important about that is when they come into that gate and they hit D-scan, they can't see you, right? Because D-scan will only show out to like 14.3. And so that means that whenever they come in, they're not going to be able to know what you're in. They're going to see you in local, obviously. They're going to know you're there, obviously, but they're not going to know what you're in. Because what you're in is going to depend a lot on where they start trying to like find you at. Like if you're in a Tengu, they're going to start looking at combat anoms or potentially like SIGs. If they see a buzzard or an astro or something like that, they're going to start looking at SIGs as well, or relic sites and data sites and stuff like that. And then obviously if you're on a mining ship or anything like that, they're going to immediately start cycling through every single or anomaly. And then also if there's ice in the system, ice is pretty much paramount, right? Like if they go into a system and there's an ice belt and they see mining ships, they're going to go ice belt first, right? Because that's what they suspect you're going to be at. Like ore noms are almost worthless to mine anyway, with the exception of like Mercoxis. But when it comes to like just them like kind of drilling down like your possible locations, because like some things like orcas and rorks, stuff like that, if you're not drag mining, they're gonna take a little bit to get off of the grid, so they're gonna have some time. Now, the big reason why I run combat sites is because you have more levels of protection because they are deep space. So we're gonna go ahead and pull up my notes here, do the whole note thing. And so we're gonna talk about things in terms of like, levels of protection, right? And the way that, combat sites work is first when they come into the system, even if they see you on DScan and they, whatever, they have one of two options. They either have to either scan you down or they have to scan the cosmic signature down. Okay, that'd be their first step. Regardless of what they do, if they scan you as a ship down with combat probes, or if they scan the combat sig down, they will always warp. They will always warp to the first gate, right? That's why if you try to like make a bookmark in like a combat site, on Pocket 3 or Pocket 2 or whatever, it's always going to take you to the beginning. So first, this would be like their first step. This would be like, step one is they have to actually, get a bead on you. And then, this would be like step two is they have to actually warp to you. And they're going to be in fast ships, right? Like pacifiers, shit like that. Like so that they can try like hot drop on you or whatever. And so let's say you're on, I don't know, if you're doing like a Pithpino complex and it's like 3 pockets, you could be on, let's say you're on the 3rd pocket. That means that they're going to have to, one, warp to gate for step 2, and then they're going to have to actually they're going to have to warp to pocket 1, and then they're going to have to warp to pocket 2, and then they're going to have to warp to pocket 3. So then now they got to warp and travel 3 gates. And that's their step 3. Okay? Now, by the time, and that's why that's why I have no problem using like a Marauder for doing combat sites, because just scanning alone is going to give you enough time to get out of Bastion. And then if they immediately warp to the first gate, even in a fast ship, you're going to have enough time to warp off to a pause. And the reason you don't want to like actually go straight to, if like, this goes for anything. This goes for mining boost. This goes for triage. This goes for siege. This goes for Bastion. If you immediately come out of Bastion and then warp to like a structure, depending on how far away it is, you won't be able to dock immediately because you're gonna have a timer, which is why we use pauses, right? If you have an active weapons timer or anything, you can go straight into the pause. You can chill, and then once that weapon timer is down, you can go and warp and dock, right? Most of the time, if you get most of the time, if you, especially if you're like in a golem too, like if they come in something like, and that's the other thing too, you got to realize as well is like not every newt is essentially going to be equipped to deal with what you necessarily have, right? There's been times where I've been in like a combat anomaly, and I see, an Astro come in. Obviously they're like a Dora. Obviously they're going to be like going for data relic sites. Am I going to warp off from my, I'm like, let's say I'm, you know, pocket 4 of a Greece's military operations base. No, I'm not gonna fucking leave, because even if they came to grid with me, I'm gonna blow them out of the fucking sky because they're an Astro and I'm in a fucking Marauder, right? Now, if it was a pacifier, I would probably leave because I'm not. The pacifier in itself is not the danger. The hot drop is the danger. But I know that if they come in a pacifier, even if I see them, if I can see them like really really close, and like if they get to this step 2, if they're on the first gate and they're starting to travel to the pocket I'm in, I still have time. Like literally, they could like actually warp to the first gate in Dead Space when I new cycle a Bastion, and I would have 30 seconds to basically leave grid and go to the pause. Plenty of time. And my strategy here is the second I see anything coming to the local, I usually down Bastion anyway, and then I'll start aligning to my pause. And then once I get like kind of a positive identification on DScan, if I see what they're in, if they're in something like a pacifier or something that can be hot dropped on me or whatever, then that's when I'll just go take 5 minutes, whatever, go hang out in the pause and all that. And also the big reason why I run an improved cloak on my Marauder too, because sometimes instead of actually leaving dead space, I'll just cloak, which removes me from DScan and all that stuff like that too, because it is a very big inconvenience. Because if I'm on pocket 4 or 5 and I have to leave, and then they leave and they decide, oh, I can't catch this guy, and then I come back to pick up my site where I was left off, I now have to gate all the way back down to pocket 4, right? So in most cases, it's better for me just to down bastion, and if there's no rats left, that's why I try to burn the pockets pretty fast, because obviously can't cloak whenever you're targeted. So if I basically have to make the decision of like, well, is there plenty of targets still left that are red boxing me, which would prevent me from cloaking? Yeah, I'll go pause. If I was already on my way to like the next gate, the next pocket, and there's no targets and they come in, I'm just gonna cloak. Is another strategy I also used for mining, where I have like an orca and like an alt or something, running ice. I'll do the cloak trick on that as well. And what really that does is I keep it ranged my Hulk at 2,200 meters from the orca in the direction of like where the pos is, and I'm basically just standing still. No siege, no compression, nothing like that. If somebody comes in, then I basically warp the Hulk to the pos, and then I just uncloak the orca, because you can cloak an orca even with active mining boost and active like foreman boost, and it'll actually like still cloak you. And then whenever those boosts try to cycle again, it'll just cut them off, right? Which is pretty nifty. Now you have to kind of worry. You want to try to clean up your Rex as well, because if you have a lot of rats come in and you've been killing them around where you've been kind of mining, and then you try to cloak, then they're going to come on grid. They're going to see where the Rex are, and they're going to kind of be like, okay, they're in that relative area. If they think you're like doing the cloak trick, they're going to start like flying around like a bunch of crazies to try to decloak you. But really, and we'll talk a little bit more about what I consider like good ice belt would be. But I hope you start like from basically everything I've been saying right now. I hope you're starting to build a pattern. So just like we'll have some like points here. So rule number one, like everybody likes rules, right? I think I had rules for jump rating as well, but rules number one, never work. We'll do never work near 0 for anything if you can. Always just try to like be away from 0 at all. And then rule number 2, we're gonna do try to be 15 AU from gates. Excuse me. And whenever when you actively try to be 15 AU from gates, that just means that you're giving them a little information when they first commit a system, and then the less information they have, the more padding you have to do what you gotta do. In most cases, what you're doing for PvE, what ships you have and what bits you have are not worth the fight. Like a blinged, like not even a blinged out golem, but like just a regular like Tech 2 golem is still gonna be close to 2 bill, right? Probably not gonna take that to a PvP fight because it just wouldn't. There's 100 different things you could take better, something like that, or like a mining fleet that has like hulks and maybe ore ice harvesters on it, like all this stuff. You're not gonna try to do anything with those, right? Now there are times when I'm a little sneaky and I'll put like my main in the golem or like something, or maybe like I'll put my main like a like some sort of a PvP ship, and then I'll have like my alt in like a, I don't know, procurer or something. Just some I basically you bait my using my own alt, I bait for mining. So I'll have like the procurer out on the ore grid, and I'll let the newt actually, if I'm really like just looking for a fight, I'll just let the newt come in. And what's funny is like that procurer is usually fit for tackle. I'll put like webs and warp disruptors on it. So when they warp onto the procurer, and then I'll basically like tackle that I'll tackle the tackle, and then I'll usually like uncloak my main who's in a PvP ship from long range, and just go to town, and then just deploy. You know, it's a fun time. We might do that for one day for a video. But no, my luck, if I made a video, I would just go all day without actually getting anybody to warp onto me. So that kind of like explains like combat sites. Combat sites are by far just the highest level of security you can have, right? Because first of all, like they have to like scan you down. If they do scan you down, they warp to you. That's why I always go really fast. I try to get through pocket 1 as fast as possible. because every subsequent pocket you go through in that site gives you a little bit more security as far as being able to get out of there if a fleet comes in, right? That's the strategy. And with anomalies, you don't get that at all. They literally can just scan you down, warp to you, and you know that is what it is. Same way, you have to use the kind of the same strategy when you're mining as well. Moon mining is a little bit different because moon mining is, I would say a little bit more dangerous because, the moon mining is always happening at a structure, which is a known overview warpable in most cases. And so, and then they can also know, they can come into the system when you're like offline or whatever, and they can see like how progressed is that moon pool. They can kind of like, they can go and pre-bookmark. And if if they've been playing for a long time, you can actually tell how far out they are from actually popping that moon. And so you'd have people like actually scheduling out fleets and already pre-bookmarking for that moon, and then they would just be like basically hunting moon pops. And so if you're on a moon, make sure you keep that in mind, because if you see people come in, they're probably gonna warp straight to you in the center of that moon cluster, because chances are they've already, kind of cased the joint for the most part. Which is why when we do moon mining, it will. And back in my old corp, when we did moon mining, we would try to like, use porpoises or um, things like that that could get off grid, or we just put eyes up in other systems. That's the other thing too, is if you have like alts and stuff like that, you can actually place them in systems around where you're kind of operating. So if you see somebody coming to local from that adjacent system, then that gives you even more time to kind of prep to either get off grid or, switch clones to get into a PvP fit, whatever the case may be. But the idea is just having as much information for you, and, denying them as much information as you can. But going back to what I was talking about earlier, is if you actually go play Newt for like a week, like if you want to be a miner, you want to like survive in null, then I would 100% recommend being a Newt for a week and make it your sole purpose to go out to null and just try to tackle a mining ship. You can even do it with a friend. Like have a friend be like, hey, I don't know what system you're gonna be in. I don't know anything about what you're doing, but I'm gonna try to come and tackle you, and use that as an exercise in all of the difficulties you have trying to tackle that mining ship. Think about that and then flip it. Be like, oh well, now what can I do to make their job even harder, right? And that goes with ratting and exploration. I guess next thing we'll talk about is actually data relic sites. Uh, these are kind of weird because they are scannable, right? Like, and they can also scan you down as well, and they're not deep pocket because they're all like one location. So unlike combat signatures, if they have to scan you down or scan the combat sig down, which is the same. And then their step 2 would actually just be warping to you. And then that would be basically it. That's they wouldn't be warping, they'd just warp to. And then they're on grid with you. So as you see, your data relic sites have basically a 1-2 steps of protection. Combat sites have 1-2-3 plus, depending on how far down in that thing you are, right? This would be like, step 3 would be like actually like multiple gates. But this would actually technically be like the highest level of protection you could have. It's just the deeper you are in on those signatures. Data relic sites are, I mean, you're not killing rats, so you're not actively targeted by anything. In most cases, unless you're doing like a sleeper site. My strategy is with the data relic sites is if somebody comes in system and I'm still in the middle of relics, then I'll basically just cloak up, right? I'll cloak up, and then if they decide to scan it down, cool. When they leave, I'll finish it. But you have a lot more flexibility here because you can just kind of cloak up and continue it whenever. And we also used data relic sites as actually bait, so you can actually pre-scan. Like if you're wanting to find like if you're really like into PvP, if you want to try to find some sort of if you want to like actually like kind of you know target other Doras, you can scan down a Dell relic site. Mostly you're probably have better luck keeping like a relic site up. Um, you can scan down that relic site, you can bookmark it, and you can also just kind of chill in there, and then you can wait for a Dora to show up. And what I do is I wait for like once the Dora is on grid with me when I'm cloaked, I wait for them to go to like the first node, and they'll give it like 3 seconds. That ensures me that they've got it targeted, they have the window up, and they're actually doing like the hacking mini game. and like that ensures that like some of their overview is or some of their view space view is kind of obscured because that window is fairly large. And then I'll just kind of like once they start going to that node, I'll slowly start cloak moving towards them, and they're gonna probably be moving fast with like a micro warp drive or whatever, like I do. But the idea is like once well, I wanna target them when they're in the middle of the mini game, when they have a lot of windows open and they have a lot, their view is obscured, and that's usually how I get them. I'll target them up. Usually it's in the Tengu. I'll target them up, alpha, and then Dunskies, which is nice because if they've actually gone to like several different systems and like stacked a lot of like rare salvage and stuff like that, like enhanced wards and stuff like that, you could pop you could pop one of these relic, ships, these relic doors with multiple hundreds of, you know, hundreds of millions of with salvage in it, which is nice. It's just kind of a waiting game for that. So knowing how that works, knowing how you would, knowing how you would attack like a Dora, keep that in mind when you're out there doing data relic sites. You know, if there's people in local, you're like, okay, well, they could be cloaked on this, relic site. Let me keep that in mind. Um, unless you actually like have docking rights and you can run around and dock and see if people are actually docked in system. The other trick you can do too is if you actually open up your star map, there's a setting that shows you. It'll actually let you set the average number of players in space in the last 30 minutes, and then it'll let you select another category that's the average or docked players in that system in the past 30 minutes. So if they are camping on a relic site, then they're going to show up as a player in space because they would have been there for probably at least 30 minutes. If you bring up that window and it shows in the past 30 minutes there hasn't been anybody in space, it either means that there's not camping a relic site or they just got out there and then that tick hasn't kind of gone through. And that's the other thing. I'll probably do a video of that in the future, but the amount of information you can get from the star map is insane. You can track Sino fields, you can track player activity in space, player activity docked, kills, ratting, like, indexes. Like, also, if you're a newt and you want to, hunt mining ships, you can literally like look at the star map and sort it by industrial index. And so it's a good idea, like, oh well, where do I find miners at? Probably the systems that have like an index of 5 on the industry. So you like start like bookmarking all those systems regularly and kind of going through and checking them because obviously there's mining being done in those systems. So definitely, like if you want to like do the whole solo omega thing, using all the tools at your disposal is super important and everything like that. One of the last things I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cover like kind of the ice strategy. Whenever a new ice belt pops up, I'm always going out there in like a either shuttle or something that's fast because I'm checking a bunch of things because I use ice for fuel and for making blocks and everything like that. And as you can see right here, we just warp 0 to this pristine white, right? And that's usually where it's going to be. All ice belts kind of look the same. And the first thing I'm looking at here is when I warp out here, I'm going to look at distance to gate. Like right now, this system has 2 gates. We're 28.9 AU from one, which is good. We're 13.1 from the other. Not great. I'd rather be, 15 AU from both. But at least we know that, if we're not completely exposed for the entirety of the entrances to the system. The other strategy I'll do is like, and this is 0. We're never going to mine near 0. And so most of the time what I'll do is I'll grab basically one of these. I'll usually just mine pristine white for isotopes. And so what I'll do is I'll come out here. I'm going to drop cloak just so I can turn on my prop mod. And I always just like set a nav out here somewhere because I know that if they're going to come and they're going to try to get me at ice, they're going to warp to the anom. They're going to hit 0. And then once they hit 0, they're going to have to come out here to me. So knowing what your, range is on like your hulks with boosts and everything like that, I know like, it depends on if you're sieging or where the case may be, but I'll go to like basically the furthest pristine white from 0. And then I'll basically go the distance that I know my mining range is from that rock, which a safe bet would be like 90, or not 90, but like 30 to start. And then once I actually find that position, I'm now going to like calculate where my pos is. so that I can get like a good start nav. So right here, somewhere right in here. And since I do have a pos in this system, I'm going to align that pos from where I want to start. And so now I know right there, I'm going to be going in that direction, which means that if I'm drag mining, I'm going to go very slowly in that direction, and it allows me to kind of stay in range of all that. So like that bookmark to start would have been like out here, which is really far from 0 and about 30 or so away from the pristine white. And I'm also going in an offshoot direction toward the pos. And all these orientations for these ice belts can change. I mean, we had one a few days ago where like I'm out here, I'm set the nav up here. But when I aligned a pos, it literally has me going straight back through the belt towards 0, which we didn't do a whole lot of mining on that one just because I didn't like the configuration of it. Because as we're mining and we're moving, we're essentially becoming more of an easy target as we go. But if a pos is like often, let's say like the pos is in this direction right here, then I'm probably going to put my start nav over here somewhere so that I'm going through, and I'm going to kind of pass through the last like tip of this ice anomaly. Like I know right now my pos is in like this direction. So even if I go like a long distance, I can pretty much be in 30 of everything on this one side. And I'm still kind of, distant from that 0 marker as well. And what I'm doing is I'm holding down Q, and this allows me to actually manually move, and it allows you to check distances as well. Like if you hold down Q and hit click, or you click once, it'll be your the horizontal movement, and then your next movement would be like vertical. So essentially, if I want to go like 15k up, I would go 15k out, click, and then go up and click, and it would actually manually move my ship up 15k. But I also use it as a way to just kind of measure, a quick way to measure distance without really like clicking on anything. And as far as positioning goes and everything like that. Now, as far as security, like we kind of did this for everything else. For ice, like, and this would be like ice or just mining in general, right? They don't have to scan you down. All they literally have to do is just, warp to you. Literally step one, like just to figure out, they just have to get lucky, essentially. So you guys should be kind of like more on your toes when you're doing things like that for the most part. But hopefully this video kind of helps you understand a little bit about like kind of what goes through my mind as I'm like out in null, and like I don't have any issues. Like that's why I'll say that null is the safest place in the game, because everything is a threat, and you know how to, if you know the game mechanics, you know how to use, if you know what your enemy has to go through to get to you and you use that against them, then you're safe, right? Like if you're in high sec and there's a bunch of unknowns in local, there's not a whole lot you can do, because there's a lot of trafficked areas there. You don't know if these people are just like chilling in their pods in an asteroid belt, or if they're legit like just a fleet of catalysts. I mean, I'll probably do a video in the future about high sec strategy and high sec survivability strategy. But null, definitely, when you get good at the game mechanics, you get good at like being a hard target. Null is like the safest place you can be. But anyway, I hope this video helps you guys, and I will, hopefully see you guys in the next video. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you all next time. Peace out.